Good morning. Welcome to SEC Football Reaction. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by Jay Greeson. We got a lot to talk about. It is maybe the highlight day of SEC media days today. Jay, we've got Arch Manning making an appearance. We've had pretty subdued Kirby Smart. We've got Auburn going as we go today. Lots of interesting topics to unpack in and around SEC football today. And I think I might have not even mentioned the biggest one so far. We'll get to that momentarily.
Huge day. A lot of storylines. I agree with Kirby being less confrontational Kirby, informative Kirby for a change. Which, when we kind of unpack Georgia, I think leads me to it kind of galvanizes a couple of my beliefs about this Georgia football team. Star-studded day with quarterbacks there, and maybe the most notable is the quarterback who's not there, because if the spring had not unfolded how it did in Knoxville, you'd bet every money in your pocket that Nico Amaliava would have been there this week. And Hugh Freeze getting playfully heckled on the SEC Now set about his golf game, as Roman Harper was asking him how to cure his slice. And Hugh rolled with it and said, imagine hitting a sledgehammer against a tree and you open that sledgehammer up, it's going to hurt. Same if you open the club face up. So it was the highlight day. But in truth, the biggest storyline of 2 days is not about what is happening or is going to happen, is the hollowed rumors that Greg McElroy floated about Nick Saban's going to coach again.
Yeah. On one hand, I have a hard time believing that, right? Because he's retired. You'd think he would have done it for a reason. I mean, I'm sure he did it for a reason. And maybe it's a harbinger that the game is coming back to a place where Nick Saban feels more comfortable with the reining in of some of the Wild West, which I think has still got a way to go. But I have a hard time believing. I mean, Nick Saban had probably mulled that retirement decision over time and time and time again. And then to go back on it would seem a little bit hard to believe. And I think Kirby Smart said it best. He laughed at it and said, hey, look, that decision won't be made by him. It'll be made by Ms. Terry, his wife, which he's right. And so that's one end of it. I'm skeptical, but here is the other end, okay? Who is the messenger? It's Greg McElroy, his former quarterback, an SEC network guy who's going to run into Nick Saban during the course of their work. Like, I don't think that Greg McElroy would just throw something out there haphazardly, because who wants to run into pissed off Nick Saban if you started a false rumor about him? And plus, Greg McElroy is exceptionally well plugged in. That was the interesting part to me, was the source of it for all those reasons.
Well, a couple of extra layers. First, I could not agree with you and Kirby more that this is not Saban's decision. This is Miss Terry's decision, which reminds me of the story in his book about Nick and Miss Terry ran into one of Miss Terry's former boyfriends at a high school reunion. And this guy was now managing a gas station. And Nick tried to take a victory lap and said, see, you could have ended up with him and you'd be back here in our hometown. Your husband would be managing the gas station. And Miss Terry, without missing a beat, said, if I'd end up with him, he'd be the head coach at Alabama, and kept up. So, hey, Nick Saban may have run college football, and he may do it again. But Miss Terry runs the Saban household, and there ain't nobody going to deny that, including Nick Saban.
Yeah,
one thing that gives me intrigue about this, Chris, is college football coaches are wired different, especially the great ones. Yeah. And there's only so much golf that's going to satisfy Nick Saban's competitive itch. And while I think he's tremendous on the game day set and adds a whole lot of insight and a whole lot of balance to some of their McAfee-led silliness, which I also enjoy. I mean, good God, listen to me talk. I'm all about the silly. But I don't think that's scratching his itch either. So, but he's 73. And what is he going to do other than tarnish the greatest resume and the greatest run we'll ever see.
Yeah. I guess my thought is, like, when he retired, he had to have thought through, I'm going to miss it at some point, right? But I guess you can think it through in your head, and when it hits you, it's different. It's like the Mike Tyson phrase, everybody thinks they can compete till they get punched in the mouth kind of thing, right? Like you have ideas in your head, and then once you experience them for a while, plus Nick Saban is still a pretty young 73, right?
Well, and one of his best friends in the business, who in a million years would have bought this time a year ago that Bill Belichick was going to be in Chapel Hill?
Right. I'm still skeptical on how that works out based on the circus that's been around UNC football that he and his girlfriend, if that's the word we use, helped create. But I think Sam's got a point here. I had not thought about the NFL because I'm thinking, like, automatically I thought, okay, where would that be? I mean, you're not going to go back to Alabama, I wouldn't think, unless it goes horribly wrong with Kalen DeBoer and they move on. Which, having the specter of that hanging over your head, if you're Kalen DeBoer, would feel a little weird and unhealthy. So I don't think Nick Saban's going to do that to the guy that just replaced him. I can't see him going anywhere else in the SEC. And I guess what could be interesting is if Brian Kelly doesn't meet expectations. You know good and well that would be an LSU phone call, I would think. But you start looking at places that he could go in college football. The list is not that big. The one thing that he has failed at is the NFL.
Well, the smaller list in college football is who would not run their coach for the chance to hire even a 73-year-old Nick Saban.
Right. Well, a lot of teams would, but you've also got some pretty elite coaches in the league. And for all that being said, he's still 73. If you've got an elite coach, like, I'll just throw this out there. Would Tennessee run off Josh Heupel for Nick Saban? And I picked that for a reason, and I'll tell you why once you answer it.
I think Tennessee's having a serious conversation. I'll tell you the only one who I think is 1,000% safe, and he spoke this morning, and that's Kirby Smart.
Right.
If Nick Saban sent his resume to Danny White or any of the other ADs across the SEC, you have to kick the tires. I mean, because you're spending $50 million to bring in a national championship, and your donors will pay the freight.
Yeah. I guess what I'm thinking is this. He's still 73. If you have a younger coach than him, which most of these guys are, and you're pretty happy with them, do you cut bait on a Josh Heupel for X years of Nick Saban? 2, 3, whatever that number is. That's the point I'm making. I don't think that I make that gamble and upheave my entire program on the whim that I could get Nick Saban and he might stay here for more than 2 or 3 years. Now, if you don't like who you've got, that's another discussion, but I think you see my point.
I do. And, okay, but Heupel's in a very small team picture in this league because maybe Ole Miss is having that same conversation with Kiffin. And maybe I sold Steve Sarkisian a little short because what he's doing in Austin probably puts him closer to Kirby, that they'd say, thank you, but no, coach. We've got a guy we really like, and we're rolling right now. But everybody else in the other 12 teams in this league, they're sending the private jet to bring Saban up for an interview.
Yeah. Well, Sam keeps floating the Titans, which I would personally love. I just don't feel like that's an organization that's got its stuff together to agree that would satisfy Nick Saban. I would love to be wrong about that, but I do think that the pro angle to me makes more sense because that is the one thing that he did not do well. You could go back, the Drew Brees thing, that goes differently. Maybe Nick Saban's still coaching in the NFL. Who knows, right? But it's an interesting topic. Speaking of which, Jay, you just paused to take a drink. Let's pause to help those who help our show. Game Time Sidekicks. Jay and I both drink from these. I do a daily one for my caffeine in the morning. And a nightly or a one in the morning that I put 40 ounces of water in. And this morning I went looking for my caffeine cup, and I'd left it in my home office. And I picked it up, and my caffeine that I'd put in there yesterday afternoon, still cold, Jay Greeson, about 20 hours later. Now, ice wasn't in there, but that's how good of a job these things do. Of course, we're talking about Game Time Sidekicks. They've got all your favorite teams. They've got your general SEC merchandise. They've got stuff for your team. They've got your championship merchandise. They've got the LSU Cups. For the baseball natty they just won, if your school has won an natty in the last few years, they've got merch for your team too. So go to GameTimeSidekicks.com. Use promo code SE20, or excuse me, SE16 for 20% off your order. They've got just all kinds of products, all kinds of lines. It is well made. It keeps your hot drinks hot, your cold drinks cold. GameTimeSidekicks.com. Promo code SE16 for 20% off. Help out those who help the show. All right, are we done with Nick Saban, or should we move on to the next topic? And I'll let you choose that if you like.
No, I think it's supposition, and I agree with you. I don't think McElroy is doing the A.J. McCarron or even some of the nonsense that Danny Cannell throws against the wall just to see what sticks and clickbait and that kind of stuff. But it's an amazingly interesting topic, which leads us to his proteges who have had monster success, and that's Sarkisian. And then, of course, you referenced Kirby. I think, honestly, Kirby's almost stoic but still energetic confidence tells me he really likes this football team.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned how young they were several times. Twice he mentioned we've got 54% of first and second year players. That to me is sort of I like my guys, but I'm hedging my bet a little bit because they're young, and inexperience in college football is something that's hard to overcome.
It is, but his quarterback looked the part in the interviews today. And I think you know what's crazy to me? Considering Tennessee's offense, considering who Jackson Arnold has around him, Gunnar Stockton, of the four teams that went today, and I know Tennessee didn't bring Joey Aguilar, but we're going to get to Arch Manning here in a second because he's going to speak today. Gunnar Stockton's not going to have to apologize to any of the quarterbacks in this league. I mean, that kid can play. And I know they got frustrated against Notre Dame in the playoff loss, but he had so many drops in that game that loss was not on Gunnar Stockton.
I'm trying to remember, the interesting thing about Georgia is it's littered with all these 5-star recruits everywhere on the team. And quarterback has been the one place that's not been the case as much lately. Carson Beck was not super highly rated out of high school from what I remember. And then, of course, before then they had a walk-on quarterback for a couple years. Gunnar Stockton, I think, is maybe cut from a little bit different cloth just in terms of natural ability. That's going to be something to watch because I think the level of other guys elevated the play of Georgia's quarterbacks in the past. This year, it could be a little bit more balanced, I think, potentially.
Oh, I agree with that. And he's going to have – there's no Brock Bowers, there's no Ladd McConkey, but he's got a whole lot of skill pieces around him of dudes that are going to be playing on Sunday.
Yes. But, it is and I was on the Georgia podcast last night. The thing about this roster, and we'll go into it a little bit more in the preview, it's not the names of Kirby Smart teams yesterday. Like, you went into the season, everybody in college football who's a fan of any stature knew who Brock Bowers was or Jordan Davis was. This is a team where, all right, these are highly regarded names, a lot of guys that we'll see in the NFL one day. But outside, just on offense, I'll throw this at you. Who is the most well-known name in college football on Georgia's offense, frankly, or defense? I'll start with offense because defense might be a little bit different. Outside of Gunnar Stockton, who is a household name in college football on offense on this roster?
I don't know if there is a household name. I think by the end of the year, Oscar Delp's going to be right there with the kid from the tight end from Vandy as two of the best at that position, not only in this league but in the country. But your point is fair. But the running back room is deep, and if Kirby's talking about inexperience in a lot of key places, it's not wide receiver. They're just not known yet because they lost what? They've lost 30 defensive draft picks in the last 3 NFL drafts, maybe 4, and 11 of them were first rounders.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like those guys are waiting until they're seniors because they're sitting behind scrubs, you know it?
Yeah. Well, and I think the other point, that the reason I excluded the defense is starting to look more like not household names like Jordan Davis, but you've got Christian Miller, you got C.J. Allen, you got Dalen Everett, K.J. Bolden. These are guys that are going to be All-American candidates. They're going to be NFL draft picks. That's the part about Georgia that feels a little bit more like it was a couple of years ago.
And that's fair. And Christian Miller's a beast now. And they're relentlessly deep in the front 7 defensively. I mean, look, every coach is going to throw out his concern. And I forget if it was with you or with Brian, but any coach who is complaining about depth at the beginning of a season knows he's got a pretty good football team, because they're going to complain about something.
Right,
so,
right.
And right behind depth is being overly concerned about inexperience, because those kids may be new to the field, but if you're playing at Georgia, you're not new to big games, and you're certainly not uncomfortable being in them.
Here's the other thing that is in the back of my head with the Stockton, starting decision, with Beck transferring out and all that too. I did not get the feeling, talking to a buddy or two of mine on the beat down there, that they were that upset that Carson Beck left. I mean, it had become a little bit of a sideshow with the girlfriend and all those things. And then, you hit the portal for the highest bidder situation, which Miami is always going to be involved in one of those, it feels like. But maybe there's a little bit of a circus sideshow element that is gone now with Beck in Miami and his celebrity girlfriend. And a guy that, if you watched him speak and listen to him, seems very humble and grounded and just out there to do a job and not to get headlines.
I think that's completely fair, Chris. And I don't think, while it was much more subdued, and it wasn't made public by any of the folks in Carson Beck's camp, I think it was probably a similar scenario that played out in Knoxville, except the Amaliavos just made it public, and Kirby said, hit the bricks.
Yeah. And I think the issues there were a little different. To Beck, it seemed to be him. With the Amaliava, seemed to be his family. He's kind of a quiet, more mild-mannered kid. And, the dad, I think, is the one that, I wasn't there, but allegedly was pushing a lot of this in a camp and an entourage. Like, you don't want to deal with either one, but the dynamics were different. But either way, it does feel like maybe both. Well, I think Georgia's probably better off with a quarterback switch. Tennessee, to be determined. I think the thought is generally that Tennessee downgraded at quarterback. Now, again, the issue is the chemistry, and especially the chemistry the way it would have been this year. You feel like you're better off in that regard.
Yes. And going back a ways, this is a kid that Georgia offensive coordinator Mike Bobo has wanted since he was a sophomore in high school in a rural community in North Georgia. So,
yeah.
Actually, I think he went to Raven County, which, if memory serves, was where they filmed Deliverance. So, if you're hearing banjos, Gunner, keep paddling, brother.
Yeah. That's a movie that once you see it, it's
I'm good.
I don't need a second watch of that one. Right.
Man, I bet Ned Beatty still has nightmares.
I think I would if I were him. Okay, let's talk this one. I don't know if you caught it yesterday. Did you catch Paul Finebaum's pretty much impromptu interview with Lane Kiffin?
A little bit of it. I was just happy to have Paul not sticking his clipboard in his mouth and salivating over Arch Manning again.
Yeah, well, it was, first of all, it was hilarious. You could tell that it was very awkward for both of them, and I think Kiffin's camp proposed it, and Lane was very, I mean, almost in comedian mode, which is not new, but it was funny to watch the whole thing go off. It wasn't mean-spirited, but it was definitely, I think Finebaum, I think that's the most I've ever seen Paul Finebaum uncomfortable when that whole thing started, because it was definitely sprung on him.
Well, I've told you the story about when Lane was at Tennessee, he was recruiting a kid at Ottawa. Lane is great in interpersonal conversations. Great. And it's one of the reasons why he's an elite recruiter. But he was waiting to recruit Jaquez Smith at Ottawa High School back in 2009, 2010. And I walked to the coach's office because I hear Lane's in the halls, and he's sitting on the floor diagramming plays with some random freshman who doesn't even play football. I mean, kids just talking ball, and Lane was all for it. And you know what? I'll never forget that. I just was really impressed with – there are a lot of people who have this, and you know it when they walk in a room. Lane's got charisma, man. I mean, whether he's Joey Freshwater or Lane Kiffin, it doesn't matter. It's just natural, and it comes.
Well, and the league is going to be a whole lot less entertaining when he's gone.
Yes.
Well, and the thing I was going to springboard into, because we're going to talk about Auburn, he downplayed the little Twitter thing that he's got going on with Hugh Freeze, and said it's nothing. He and Hugh are friends. I on the scale of 1 to 10, being 1 you don't buy it at all, and 10 being you buy it completely. What's your take here? You got to unmute your mic.
Say it again. 1 to 10, what?
1 to 10. Did you hear? Were you watching yesterday when Finebaum asked Kiffin about the little feud between he and Hugh Freeze on Twitter?
No, but if he downplayed it at all, I don't buy it a lick.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss fans are going to line up and applaud him because they hate Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
And for the way that soured, and now he's back in the league. So, but no, I mean, he's an easy target because Auburn's not really good right now. I mean, it's one thing to swing a stick at Kirby, and Kirby shows up and is going to stomp a mud hole in you. But it's a whole different kettle of fish to take easy shots at Hugh. But I will say this, Hugh was relaxed and confident with his team. I'm telling you, he was really good and embraced the golf conversation, kind of what we talked about yesterday, about leaning into it. I mean, I thought that was the smart play.
He said something really interesting, did Hugh Freeze, in his interview with, I think it was, I don't know if it was Roman Harper and Alyssa Lang or who was there, but he was, and it came out of a conversation about Jackson Arnold, who's, of course, their quarterback transfer from Auburn. And it went kind of like this. Hey, everything went badly around Jackson last year in Oklahoma. The line, the receivers getting hurt, all the things that we already know. And Hugh Freeze talked about needing sort of to rebuild Jackson Arnold's confidence. And he said at one point, he said, and let me see if I can find it exactly how he said it in my note here. Well, here it is. Said he did a psychological profile on Jackson Arnold. But before that, he threw one in on himself, which I thought was interesting because I think self-awareness is like the biggest thing that Hugh Freeze needs and has also been resistant to. And in there, he said, I did a personality profile on myself and on Jackson. And what I discovered is that the way I communicate to him is old school, and that's not what he needs. Now, I don't know exactly what he meant by that. Felt maybe like a little bit more of when you think old school, you think a little more fire and brimstone, right? And kids right now are probably wired a little differently than they were when Hugh Freeze grew up. I thought that was very interesting because one reason I'm always a little down on Auburn the last couple of years is I don't think Hugh Freeze can generally get out of his way. Now, was that something that he said to – like Hugh Freeze reads and sees everything said about him. Was that a thing where it's in the water? I know that I've got to address this, like he kind of did with the golf thing, and I'll say the soundbite at the time that gets people off my back, or was it sincere? Because to me, if it's the latter, and Hugh Freeze can get out of his way a bit more than he has in the past, I think the ceiling for Auburn is higher. But my concern with them, the play has not lived up to the talent since he's been there. And he got into some other things too that I think were valid points. But to me, that was one of the more interesting things I've heard a coach say in Atlanta so far.
I can concur with that. I also think you have to be way more open to change, knowing that this is in a lot of ways a do or die situation in could be his last major job. Because if this fails, he's done.
Yes. I mean, at this point, I was going to say, there's always a small job somewhere, but he comes with so much baggage at this point that if he doesn't change the image, I agree with you.
Because more than the golf thing, all the Auburn fans I know are more concerned with his habitual passing the blame. I mean,
right.
Whether it's the quarterback play, whether it's the play call, whether it's just never been his fault. And ultimately, it's always your fault. And that's sports. The head coach and the quarterback are always going to get too much credit when they win and too much blame when they lose. And that's just part of the role. It's why they get paid the most, whether it's in NIL money or in contract money.
Yeah, and that's why I've been hesitant to jump on the Auburn bandwagon with him there, because that is something that predated him at Ole Miss. Like, lifetime habits are hard to break. And that's why I just think Hugh Freeze is his own worst enemy. But he did say some stuff that I thought was interesting, because ultimately it is the head coach's fault. And you could be right about Hugh Freeze in what you say, because I think that's all fair. But he also mentioned some things that were also true at the same time. He said we can't be dead last in turnovers again. The kicking game has got to be better. I mean, they had a pretty good kicker a year ago, and he spent the whole year sick. I think he got down to 110 pounds. He talked about how the defense played well, and those things cost him some games. Now, again, there's blame in that Hugh Freeze has got to take. But there was also an element of Auburn's performance last year, Jay, that was a little bit of bad luck that I think is, just by sheer chance bound to turn around.
I agree with that. I mean, and in both of those regards, it's one of the things that, seeing some of the interesting stats that popped up here today, it's going to be, I mean, you and I have talked about, and we talked some about it yesterday. I'm real high on Austin Simmons, and I think Ole Miss has got a schedule that's doable, but are they going to get 50-plus sacks this year? Are they going to be +8 in turnovers? I mean, some of those things regress to the median, whether you're good or not. And the ball bounces funny, man. I mean, I don't want to sound like a football coach and start saying you play like you practice, but there's no way Auburn can get as many bad breaks this year as it got last year.
Right. Well, and Jackson Arnold's thinking the same thing as their quarterback. And to me, I think he may be the biggest wild card in the league.
He's the player in the league that has the most swing. I mean, Auburn could be a playoff team if he plays well, because their schedule is doable. But if he doesn't, they're going to be looking for a new quarterback and a new head coach.
Well, it feels like this is kind of the situation where, now if they get hurt, everyone around him gets hurt again, all bets are off. But Hugh Freeze brought up the point, they return all three of their interior offensive linemen. And look, he's got 2 All-American receivers in Coleman and Singleton. Now, I don't know what the running game is with Austin and those guys. I think, you got those many weapons. And Arnold was a 5-star kid in high school. You played your potential, it'll take care of itself. But, I mean, there's a lot of stuff lined up there for Auburn to go right.
I agree.
What do you
But I
think
think that
Arnold?
every year. I think that every year,
Well,
Chris. I'm the one optimistic Auburn fan I know.
well, and I don't have a dog in the hunt. I don't care. I look at it and I see a lot of stuff that the more I look at the roster I like. Again, I have a hesitancy that Hugh Freeze can ultimately get out of his own way. And that's always going to be there until I can see him prove it. But, I mean, a lot of the talent there, Jay, is undeniable. And my question, though, I think to me is Jackson Arnold the guy that they thought he was out of high school? And I don't know that it's fair to say, is he the guy that we saw last year? Again, because the supporting cast around him was awful. Once the injuries hit, and they hit everywhere. But I guess the better way to phrase it would be, is he more like the guy they thought he would be, or is he not going to live up to that?
I think and that's a question that's impossible to answer until they snap the football. But I think that is the biggest question about on Hugh Freeze's future and the present of Auburn football.
Yeah. Anything else with Auburn that caught your eye today?
It was hilarious to see Keldrick Falk interviewed by Dari Noka. And now I'm a head taller than Dari Noka. I'm 6'4", but this kid's like 6'7" and huge and long arms and a future NFL player. And I'll tell you this, I love this question from Dari Noka, who is a really likable guy. So they're going over Keldrick Falk's bling in the interview room. He's got like a diamond necklace with his number on it. He's got some high dollar watch, silver chain. Hell, it may have been platinum for all I know. And Dari's first question was, "So Keldrick, NIL doesn't suck, does it?" And he just started laughing. And I thought, that is exactly what everybody in the building was thinking. So that was a perfect question.
Yeah. That was he seemed like a pretty humble kid for a guy that's going to be a first rounder and has got the All-American accolades and all those things. So that was a good one. Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. I mean, like the Auburn defense has been pretty good for a few years now. Feels like that side of the ball has been pretty steady. It's not been spectacular. Maybe not one of your old school Pat Dye defenses, one of the elite ones, but it's been good enough to win them games. And they got a lot of dudes coming back on that side of the ball too.
Well, and having watched them extensively, most of the big plays, big yardage, and ultimately the points came late because they spent all the time on the field, and you get gassed and frustrated when your offense either goes 3 and out or turns it over and puts you in a short field to where half the time after those turnovers, if Auburn was lucky enough to force a field goal, yeah, it's 3 points, but that's a win for the defense.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to be very interested to see how it goes there because I've got, to me, that is – Auburn, to me, is one of the teams in the league with one of the larger ranges of performance. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's not only a fair statement. I think that's one – I think they're in the team picture of the teams in the country.
Yeah.
With the most drastic inverted bell curve of this could be a 4-win team or a 2-loss team.
You know, this is crazy. That is exactly what I was going to say, down to the number of losses. And, like, you can make a case of either almost with equal conviction.
Yes. And it all falls really on Jackson Arnold's shoulders, which is a ton of pressure for a stadium that has already sold out all 87,542 seats.
Yeah. I think and when you're in one of those situations, a lot of times it is, how does this start, right? Because if you've got a lot of bad vibes and momentum around your program, and Hugh Freeze has certainly got about as much of that as any coach in the conference. When it starts poorly, now, look, there were exceptions. Billy Napier at Florida last year. I mean, it just felt like that thing was doomed from mid-September on, and he pulled it out of a nosedive and lived to tell about it with a better ball club this year, by the way. The issues for Hugh Freeze are very different, but likewise, they have got him squarely on the hot seat. I don't really like their schedule in some ways. Going to Baylor first in what is going to be probably a field goal game one way or the other. Ball State will tell you nothing. It gets you a win. You've got a South Alabama team they'll be a big favorite in that. But it's, hey, how many of those kids at South Alabama grew up wanting to play at Auburn? That's a little bit of a potential recipe for disaster. South Alabama is usually, maybe not since the coaching change, I don't know as much, but that's not an opponent that you schedule lightly outside of the Power Four. And then you go to Oklahoma, where if you lose that, I mean, whoever loses that game, because all that's going to be on, the focus is going to be on your quarterback situation, with Oklahoma going to John Mateer and casting Jackson Arnold off, and Arnold being the guy at Auburn. Like, if you're Auburn and you win that game, that's a big one for Hugh Freeze, especially after losing it last year. If you lose that game, then, I mean, my goodness, you can imagine talk shows in Alabama on Monday.
Well, Sam put it in the chat, and I've said it in multiple platforms here on the Southeastern 16 network. There are more marquee Labor Day weekend games. Texas going to Columbus to play the Ohio State. The Battle of Death Valley with LSU going to Clemson. I mean, those are all going to be top 10 programs. There's no more pressure on a season opener than Auburn going to Baylor for a whole lot of the reasons you said.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole lot of uneasiness among the Auburn fan base. And you come back from Baylor and you're 0-1, it's going to do nothing but ratchet up.
And that's a Friday night game also, isn't it?
It is.
So if that doesn't go well, you've got a whole extra day in your weekend to talk about it. And everybody's going to be watching, because what else are we going to do that Friday night?
Well, I'll be at a high school football game.
Well, other than that, but you'll be watching that one on your phone, I'm sure.
I'll probably tape it.
All right. Next topic at Arch Manning. What kind of circus is that going to be today?
I don't know if it's one we've seen. I really don't know if it's one we've seen. Maybe since that would have been a better comparison for Finebaum to make to Arch Manning, is the circus around Arch is comparable and maybe not seen. I'll tell you the one we'll see is when Johnny Manziel was coming off the Heisman.
Yeah.
And that unbelievable, and he did it, and for a whole lot of the wrong reasons, because Manziel then was a TMZ darling and wore the Scooby-Doo outfit, and everywhere you saw him, he was with some Oklahoma smoke show. Shout out Zach Bryant, by the way, great musical artist. He's currently high in my rotation in the F-150. So it's going to be everywhere, and not just. Man, oh man, the guy's going to make his first season as QB1 in Texas. That guy's now not even going to. I mean, there's a great scene in City Slickers where those two guys that own the ice cream shop, one guy says he can pick any ice cream to go with any meal, and Billy Crystal goes, "All right, Franks and beans," and the guy goes, "Scoop of chocolate, scoop of vanilla. Don't waste my time." I mean, unless you're ESPN or the SEC network, who's getting a one-on-one with Arch Manning these days?
Good point. Good point. I mean, that is going to be – the SEC is very corporate anyway. Everything is roped off and protected. I think that's going to have an extra layer to it.
I do too. And somebody put it in yesterday. You're talking about a kid with out of scripted Hollywood, the last name. Doesn't need NIL. I mean, damn, the Mannings could be the 51st state they've made so much money. He's at one of the high-profile blue bloods in this sport. He's playing the position. And he is just – I mean, he's out of central casting, man. And not only the league, but I think the entire sport is going to treat him like John Travolta in The Boy in the Bubble. I mean, they want him to be the face of this game and on the cover of EA's College Football 2027.
I just Googled this to look up his NIL partnerships. He's got them Red Bull, Panini, Uber, Viore, and a couple of other apparel companies. He got something apparently with Powerade. Like, How many guys have been the backup quarterback? Well, I guess that's a dumb question because we haven't had this framework with NIL and college football. But how crazy is that he's got more endorsement deals by a factor of several than he's got college starts, and we're year 3 in college.
And it's not like he's got Ed's mattress and cheese wholesalers from outside of Austin who just wants to be linked into the program. I mean,
right.
Uber and Red Bull are national brands.
I can't remember if we've talked about this before. What do you think? I'm always hesitant to anoint a guy before he's the guy. Are you bothered by the fact that Quinn Ewers was their starter the last 2 years and Arch Manning did not make a bigger dent?
No, I'm not bothered by that because I think, look, college football coaches are a lot of things, and some of them are predictable. They want to control the controllables. They want to, if it's winning, it's working, and we're going to stay with what's winning and working. And I mean, I think Quinn Ewers was liked in the locker room. I think that he had a lot of talent around him, but he's another one that I don't think anybody was beating on his door to bring him back because they knew what was on the horizon. And Sam's 100% right. He better be good because if he's not, there are a whole lot of people, as many people want to be like Finebaum and call their shot and say this guy's going to be the next whoever. There are also a whole lot of people who are going to be ready to pounce on the people who anointed this kid if the kid doesn't live up to the anointments. So,
yeah.
And that's a tough spot. But look, man, this guy's pedigree, you don't think he felt pressure taking his first snap with that last name in 6-year-old Pee Wee football? I mean, this kid's lived with it his whole life.
Yeah, there's not a person in the universe that you would think would be better suited for what he's about to go through than Arch Manning, just by pedigree and all those things.
Completely agree.
And by the way, Finebaum walked back his comment a little bit yesterday. I think he termed it basically 4th of July exuberance.
Well, I call it something different. I call it 4th of July liquor.
Right, that might be. That might be. Yeah, he was getting a hard time, I think, from Jordan Matthews or someone on that yesterday. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see. I mean, we've had circuses at Media Day before. If you want to go way back, you had the Phil Fulmer thing with Alabama, and you know, anytime anybody from Alabama walked into a room, you know, especially Nick Saban, it was, you know, and if you've ever been to those things, you got people in the lobby getting autographs. I mean, it's roped off. It's probably more roped off than it ever was before, you know, 10, 20, 30 years ago. But I think you leading with the whole comment along the lines of this will be the biggest circus we've seen at Media Day ever. That's a pretty high bar to clear.
It is, but I'm not talking about the fans. I'm talking about, and part of that's going to be expected as ESPN is now a full partner with the SEC. I mean, we're gonna get wall-to-wall SEC stuff from the 4-letter network because a lot of people needs to know that the N stands for network, not news. And
right.
ESPN's goal is promoting their programming as much as it is informing their viewers.
Here's a question I have. Let's say they go to Columbus. They get beat. He throws 3 picks in game 1. With all the buildup going into that game, what does it look like from that point on?
I think going to Columbus is awesome timing for Arch Manning because if he went to, say, Lubbock and they lost to Texas Tech and he threw 3 picks, there are a whole lot of people who are going to struggle against Ohio State this year because they got that much talent. So I don't think the wheels fall off and I don't think it rains down. Now, if they're 1-3 going into the last week of September, then we may be having that conversation. And somewhere Quinn Ewers is going to light up a big fat Cuban cigar and say, "How you like me now?" So But no, the going to play somebody really tough, I actually think helps Arch Manning get his feet wet, even though it's going to be a difficult task. But the thing that helps Arch Manning the most are the 11 defensive guys he's got at Texas who are all going to play on Sunday.
Well, and here's the other thing with the schedule thing. If it does go wrong, he's got San Jose State, UTEP, Sam Houston State the next 3 weeks at home. Then he's got an off week, and then they go to Florida. So plenty of built-in time there if for some reason it doesn't go as well as people would think.
I agree with that. With that. And I guess the last one we got to get to is in-depth about Josh Heupel and what all's going to be asked and said post Nico Amaliava.
Yeah, I was on a text thread with a buddy of mine in that media market, and the question was, "Hey, be sure to ask Josh Heupel about Nico." I think that'll get checked off the bingo card pretty quickly.
Well, like Hugh Freeze in the golf, Heupel needs to lean into it, address it however he wants to address it in his opening comments, and then he can defer and deflect the rest of the questions in the media room, because I still would like to hear details about the numbers that Nico was wanting.
Yeah. And, well, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be talked about publicly, but who knows?
Well, you and I both know that it's our job to go in there and ask questions, even if we know it's going to tick them off, and even if we know they're not going to answer them. And hell, you and I have asked questions to guys that are 10 times more famous and 10 times wealthier than we are, knowing they were going to lie directly to us, and then they lied, and we still have to write it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my least favorite part about the job. But, okay, if you're Josh Heupel, there's two ways you can handle it. There's the way that you can wait for the question and be prepared to how to answer it, that you rehearsed with your media relations guy 10 times in the hotel room the night before. And there is just get it out ahead. You know, take the elephant out of the room and address it. Which do you do if you're Josh Heupel?
I come at it front on, but that's the way I've always been in just about everything that I try to do. And I talk about it, and I think Sam, if you want to talk about a bingo card, I think what Sam put in the chat, that he expects Heupel to say, "I'm here to talk about the guys that are in our locker room, not the guys that are not." It'll be something along those lines. I'd put that in my center square of my bingo card. So now what we had earlier in the chat about, hey, look, Sam's dialed into Tennessee sports now.
Sure.
And he doesn't think it's a dunk that Joey Aguilar is going to be the QB1 day one.
Interesting.
Yeah,
well, the guy that got behind him was pretty highly rated out of high school, 2 years ago? Am I correct?
Sounds right.
Out of maybe North Carolina. Is that right?
And look, I've been unrelenting with my praise of Lane Kiffin as a quarterback whisperer, but Josh Heupel needs a whole lot of flowers in that category too. It is, and it goes all the way back to redirecting Hendon Hooker, getting the most out of a Joe Milton kid who had a unbelievable arm, but was erratic in the mid-range passing game. But Josh Heupel's offense, if Josh Heupel was sitting next to me after I asked him how many times does he get compared to Bobby Hill from King of the Hill, I would have to ask him, are you more worried about replacing Dylan Sampson than you are Nico Amaliava? And I'd bet you any amount of money he'd say, hell yes.
Yeah, in my heart of hearts, I think that would be my answer too. This is why I have been – well, first of all, okay, everything around Nico the start of last year, great leader, great teammate, does everything the right way. Like these guys, everybody in Knoxville who spoke about him, and I'm not taking shots at anybody, it was like they were all his PR agents. And I'm not telling you that's not genuine, okay? But it got interesting because once he got into SEC games, he lit up the Kent States and all the teams that they were playing that they could score on in their sleep. And then it got tough, and the numbers took a pretty good nosedive. And the thing that I had heard was that what went on was a little bit of a money grab, because the confidence that he could be that guy in the NFL and make his payday there was waning a good bit. And that family had to take its swing then. If that's how it went down, I don't want any part of that. Because if you don't believe in you, then I'm not going to believe in you either.
I'm – and as we said, I remember we went live the Saturday morning that broke on a Friday night on the orange and white game. And I said it then, and I said it now. At some point in time, the mistakes the Amaliava's made in this, because I'm never going to begrudge anybody asking for a raise. We all deserve whatever we think we're worth. I get that. But Daddy Amaliava making this public is where this blew up. And Heupel standing his ground. And because then, as I remember saying this to you, as sure as I'm sitting here, then the line forms out your door and around the locker room all the way out to Neyland Stadium of everybody else asking for more.
Yeah.
Once this becomes public. Well, if Nico's getting more, then why don't I get more?
Here's another thing. If the quarterback's Joey Aguilar, who, last year was okay, I guess. You'd like to see that interception percentage get down. I mean, he was a fine quarterback at Appalachian State. He had boosted his stock to get a better position at UCLA. Not an elite runner a year ago. That's been a dimension of Tennessee's offense that Josh Heupel's really made go. And I guess the other reason, just as a footnote to Iamaleava kind of running from everything, you see what Hendon Hooker did under Josh Heupel. I mean, I would think if you think you can be a pro, you want to stay in that offense. And you want to stay under his – maybe it's not a pro offense, I get. But Josh Heupel has had a history of making quarterbacks better. And we talked about, I think we'll close with this, go full circle on the show. A lot of our show has been about pressure on coaches and quarterbacks. I feel like that whole thing took a lot of pressure off both Josh Heupel and whoever the quarterback is. I mean, you're always going to be in the spotlight at Tennessee. That is a high-pressure job. But I feel like the temperature on all that got turned down a couple of degrees on everybody just by the way that all – because, it feels like nobody is siding with Nico in all this. I mean, it's funny. Tennessee is not a side that a lot of people rush to in the SEC, but I felt like the verdict was pretty unanimous on that one.
And let's divide this, because Jerry made a really good point in the chat. By all accounts, and you referenced this earlier, Nico's a really good kid. Now, did he not play as well as maybe a lot of us thought, especially with the athletic story coming out of high school that he got $8 million or whatever it was to sign with Tennessee over 4 years? And but Nico, this is not – I don't think this is as much on Nico as this is on his parents. And I completely and wholeheartedly agree with you that if it's a 2-2 September, they're going to be a whole lot of folks tailgating outside Neyland Stadium blaming the Amaliavas more than they're blaming Josh Heupel.
Absolutely, or whoever the quarterback is. And I think you think about this as a parent, okay? First of all, don't pimp your kid out. Number two, your kid was a volleyball player a lot of his life, late to football. He might be the best athlete in the world. That guarantees you nothing in terms of playing a new sport. It might give you an edge, but it guarantees you nothing. And I think Tennessee maybe should have thought that through a little bit too, before you put everybody in that spotlight and the money's out there and the plane trip and all those kind of things, right? I do primarily blame the parents, but in hindsight, with his inexperience, the fact that he's shy, I think there's a lot of people that should have thought all that through a little better before it became what it became. Now,
an interesting conversation is the reverse one. What if he's college football's darling in LA?
Yeah.
Because then, I mean, I don't think that blows back on Heupel at all. Because you're right, it's been. I can't come up with one off the top of my head in terms of controversial moments where it feels universally that everybody sided with Heupel on this, of standing his ground and not breaking the bank and have the program held hostage, or however you wanted to phrase it. But this one felt like, I mean, in political realms, this is Reagan over Mondale.
Okay, I've got a yes but for you, though. Okay, try this on for size. Sports are a what have you done for me lately business. And if it goes poorly in Knoxville and it goes well in UCLA, you cannot tell me the narrative might not change. I won't say will, because everything that you just said is spot on. But let's say Nico becomes a Heisman guy at UCLA and it's not going well at Tennessee, and the quarterback is a big part of why. Does it then become, okay, they should have just bit the bullet and paid Nico his money and dealt with it? Because that will be that will be talked about.
Look, as everybody's pouring dark liquor at Tennessee tailgates in their game time sidekick ice retention magic cup, yes, that will be, well, we should have paid Nico. Yeah, but you know what? Everything in life, hindsight's 20/20. And if you're going to praise it when the decision is made on what is in front of you, then you got to stick to it, ride or die, ride or die.
Yeah. All right, on the way out, as we wrap up, remind you, new sponsor here. Don't have an ad read for me yet, but our partners at ROKFORM, they make amazing stuff with cell phone cases, with tailgating speakers, all kinds of stuff. It is ROKFORM.com. Got you covered on a lot of cell phone devices, things. Man, these are premium. They are sturdy. They are made to withstand some pretty crazy stuff. Go to ROKFORM, ROKFORM.com. Checked out their stuff. I think you will love their products. We appreciate them partnering with us. All right, Jay, let's close it here. Anything worth the discussion in a minute or two that we didn't get to today?
If you had to wager a sizable amount of money that Nick Saban's going to coach again, are you betting yes or no?
Well, I hope I don't have to, because I can tell you reasons why for both, right, that are equally compelling. But I think if I had to, I would bet no. You?
I would probably bet yes, but I would bet no on coaching again in college.
Yeah. The more I think about it, I think the thing that Kirby Smart said, his response, and Kirby Smart knows Nick Saban better than anybody. And he pointed, basically said the decision is going to be made by his wife. I mean, Nick Saban's got grandkids now.
A bunch.
He's got older kids. He's got time to do stuff. I think he's fantastic on TV. I get it. And you only live once, and your opportunity to coach, your window, again, is very small. And I get it. But there's a lot of life that Nick Saban has missed out on now that he is now getting to lead. And I think that affects his wife and his marriage probably. And that is why I ride with the no.
All right. You guys become members. We'll do more members-only stuff, including some football season story time with Jay.
Yeah, story time with Jay is always fun. Membership is $4. It entitles you to members-only streams. You get content here you don't get anywhere else. I'm not making a promise, but I kept an eye on the MLB draft. I'm thinking of doing a stream maybe Friday for members, talking about how rosters shook out following the draft and some portal activity. So no promises. I'm leaving on vacation out of the country for Saturday, so not going to guarantee it, but if I can get to it, I'm going to try it. We'll be back tomorrow at 11-ish, probably Central, maybe noon, depending on Jay's schedule, for some more Media Day reactions and SEC football talk. Thank you guys for watching. God bless you all. We'll see you again soon at Southeastern 16.